We back with another Unveiled reaction. Wifey can be here right now, so I'm gonna do this one again by myself. This one is a personal interest of mine. I kind of like political stuff, and I've been kind of paying attention to Vivek. Can't even pronounce his last name right. So he recently was on a Breakfast Club podcast, and him and Charlamagne got into a few conversation. I don't want to call it debate, but I guess they say he was schooling him on certain topics, and I kind of want to see what they're talking about. If you're not familiar with Vivek, go look at him. He's very popular. He's in every blog right now. He's also an entrepreneur too, and what you might call a politician. I think he's like a founder of some like company, like a pharmaceutical company that he created or own or whatever. But he's a very interesting guy. So we're gonna get into it and see what they.
Biden, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm gonna kind of skip this this part and get right into it. Let me see right about here.
Those who work to abolish slavery instead of it had Charlamagne's jaw on the floor. We never thought we'd say that. Watch.
Now, don't be the person who was the slaveholder back then. Be John Adams. That's what we should call ourselves to be. The person who bucks the trend of their time to say, I'm going to speak on my own conviction and do what's different than being the product of my own time. Because anybody can parrot what the...
Oh, my God. We're going to skip that.
Slogan is of their day. But the hard thing to do is to say the pack is running this way and I'm going this way instead anyway because it's grounded on my conviction.
People like John
That's
Adams,
what we need.
People like John Adams are the reason you can point at it and say it was wrong, though, because John Adams knew it was wrong.
Well, a lot of people are going to be doing things today that are different than the way that each of us is going to be living our lives and say the same thing in 250 years from now. Somebody else is going to be having the same conversation. Abe Lincoln wasn't around then, man. That was still
later on.
That was.
Oh my God, Charlamagne! I don't know if he just had a brain fart, bro. That's like saying LeBron James in the '90s was like, come on, LeBron. Everybody knew LeBron didn't play in the '90s. It was Michael Jordan that was playing in the '90s, not LeBron James. How you get those two confused? Abraham Lincoln, I believe, was like maybe the 16th or the 17th president. I'm not sure, but around there. And then, the other guy is I believe the second or third president. It's not even like, come on now. That is not even the same time, buddy.
Still later on. And we'll just take the story down. We'll just pass this lineage down. We don't talk American history enough. Actually, it irritates me. A lot of conservatives talk about the importance of knowing history without actually just talking about history. Let's talk this through. So John Adams, his
history is very important.
Son is John Quincy Adams. He's the first non-founding father who became a president. Here's a funny fact about him. He was the first. So outside of the founding fathers, he was the first one who was elected president. He actually wasn't a great.
Didn't even know that. Didn't know that. But hey, you learn something new every day.
President. He was elected out after one term. People didn't love him. And so he tried to find everything else he could do. He went and tried to write some books and he went and tried to start some nonprofits and none of that spoke to him. He's the only president, John Adams' son, who went back to Congress after being a president. So he's elected to multiple terms of Congress. And you know what he went back to Congress with? Was one thing he regretted not doing as a president, was abolishing slavery. This is long before Abraham Lincoln comes along, okay? So he wanted to abolish slavery. His father was an abolitionist. He didn't accomplish much.
Hey, we have to give kudos to Mr. Quincy and his father. Because, at the time, not a lot of people was fond of black people. Obviously, we know what we went through. And for him try to like abolish slavery, to me, that's something that I respect, at least trying for it. Big shout out to them.
Much during his tenure as president. He was a good Secretary of State, but he was not a very good president. Think about the humility to say, I'm not even going to go to the Senate. I'm going to go become a congressman and get reelected multiple times with the mission of abolishing slavery. Now, here's what happens. There was a rule that Congress passes. It's called the gag rule.
Gag rule. That's Paul, Mr. Vivek.
Stopped people from using the word slavery. Like they literally couldn't use the word slavery because they didn't want people to utter the word because it made them uncomfortable. So this guy's already been the U.S. president. Okay, so he has nothing to lose. He's just a congressman now. He says, I'm going to say the word. I'm going to say it, slavery. Slavery, slavery, slavery. There. Congress has set the rule that you can't say the word slavery. Well, I'm going to say it. So they censure him and have, just like they have today for George Santos or whatever, they'll have the equivalent of kicking him out of Congress. So they have his trial in Congress. And he uses his own personal trial, because this guy's got nothing to lose. They use his own personal trial for saying the word slavery when you're not allowed to say the word slavery to make the case for abolition from the stand of his own trial to being kicked out of Congress. At the end of that, they get rid of the gag rule. So you're allowed to say slavery, which opens up the debates that you're then allowed to have. So a year later,
Wait, so the gag rules was to not let anybody say the word slavery. And then Quincy, as a congressman, went against that and mentioned, I believe he did. He also said he was sanctioned for it. So therefore, because of his act or bravery, I should say, they open up, they changed the rules, and now they're having open discussion about, slavery. Now I pause. I want to see what he said next. I don't know if that's going to lead into something else, good or bad, but we're going to see.
a year or so later, he's given a speech on the Congress floor. I mean, it's amazing. This guy with this humility. He's given a speech on the Congress floor. He has a stroke in the middle of his speech. He dies right there.
Whoa, that is crazy. That's wild.
There. He doesn't die quite yet. They take him up to the upstairs room, keep him alive for another couple of days. And eventually he dies up in that anteroom outside in the same Congress where he then devoted that later stage of his career. And they took volunteers for who's going to be the person who carries out his funeral rites and carries him out. And the guy who raises his hand and does it was a first-term congressman nobody had heard of, hadn't said a word, by the name of Abraham Lincoln.
Wow. Learning something today.
And so these are the stories of our history, man. We don't tell these stories anymore.
And
we celebrate, we put back our founding fathers and we talk about how these people are slave owners and we're going to dismiss the ideals they set into motion without recognizing that, like us today, these are imperfect human beings that still strived and to be the best that they possibly could have, just as we do today.
Kind of have mixed feelings about that. I mean, I do agree that, people make mistakes. But for 400 years, people went through like slavery and went through a whole bunch of stuff. I understand. I'm not saying let's, get stuck on that. I do believe, just like he's saying right now, that those American history is no longer being like told or being, thought like I understand that or whatever. Because this is a great story. I didn't know about it, so I'm learning something. But just to say that, they were slave owners. There were slave owners, and for Black people, they're gonna just. I'm not just saying that that's all they were, but they're known for being slaveholders. Are we gonna just focus on that and not talk about the other stuff? No, obviously we can mention other stuff, but you can't. And I do agree with his point of we can't just look at them that way, but that's part of history. If you're gonna talk about history, every time the name come up, we're obligated. It's imperative for us to mention that, because that's part of their history, that's part of Black history, and that's part of American history. And it was a terrible thing that happened. So we can't just skip over that.
And so it bothers me deeply for us to just lazily reject that, as opposed to saying we acknowledge those imperfections, but we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union.
Absolutely, but the reason
pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all.
You can't just dismiss it and say, okay,
I'm not dismissing it, though. Do I sound like I'm dismissing it, Charlamagne?
Yes, but the reason...
No, okay. I don't... A little bit. It do sound like a little bit like, okay, like they were great. They did all of this great thing for the country. But if you're not on the other side of the coin, it's really hard for you to understand how somebody else would feel, So, but I see the point he's trying to make, but I also see what Charlamagne is saying at the same time, because once he said that, I kind of felt some type of way a little bit. So let's just see.
I disagree with you, man. And I
the
think
reason
that
you can't say
if you're going to
Thomas
put me in the
Jefferson,
category of the conversation we had and saying that I just dismissed it out of hand, I think that's unfair. I just think that's unfair.
I
I don't think
that,
I dismiss it,
but
but I acknowledge the totality of what a human being is, which is an imperfect and flawed human being who we can still celebrate.
I'm fine with that.
Which I agree with. Nobody's perfect.
But you can't.
That's what we have to be.
But you can't tell people just to ignore the fact that Thomas Jefferson.
I'm not telling people to ignore it, though.
Okay.
And this is what I think I'm in this to unite the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're going to take this seriously, every one of us has to acknowledge the full nuances of our history in every direction. To say that we're not going to listen to Thomas Jefferson or that our founding was illegitimate because they were deeply imperfect and flawed is every bit as bad as somebody who's going to say that I'm going to entirely dismiss the fact that they were slave owners. I think that both of those are mistakes that could lead to the failure of our country as we know it. I think our country will cease to exist if either side of our debate is, on one hand, willing to say, oh, slavery was some made-up myth, and actually, I don't know, it was in the interest of, people could say such things, it was the interest of black people to be slaves, whatever.
Ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I think that if we have a different side that says our founding fathers who wrote a Declaration of Independence founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union, right? The pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all, not claiming we're perfect, but that we're a nation founded on freedom for all who aspire to have it, and that we're imperfect. But we eventually got there 250 years into as darn close as we've ever been. To reject that and say that we can't celebrate that founding because they made a mistake of being slave owners. I think that is every bit as bad for the future of our country versus acknowledging that we are still.
Okay, not that he clarify, like, I agree with it. Like, we can't just, like, okay, like, it's good to know your history, but it's also good to, like, I want to, like, move on, because, like, life is not going to wait for you. Like, you need to evolve as a person. Like you said, nobody's perfect, even though they committed all of those atrocity, which is going to be in American history forever. That is not going to change. But it's also good to acknowledge where we at today. There's still racism. There's still things that happens. Whether you want to call it, inequality or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, in order for people to even become better, not perfect, but better, we have to come together and unite. I agree with them 100%.
Pursuing that more perfect union.
What I would say is what you talked about with Thomas Jefferson when he took the razor and he took out some of the philosophies that he agreed with. We should take some of those things that we agree with, but then everybody should come to the table.
We already know that there's going to be a lot of money made because of artificial intelligence.
Because all was not at the table when those people wrote those documents.
We got that.
We have to.
That's true too. That's true. You can't just go and make rules and then not involve the other party and then just expect them to just follow it after things that you have done to them in the past history. That's true too. But let's keep going.
Too much of a diverse country.
We understand that.
Okay.
But my point is not rejecting that or taking a hammer to it. It's more of a different response. It's like, we got it. Like like at a certain point, we've got to say, we've got it.
We don't though.
No, but
we can, but we don't.
We got it, and now it's time for 360-degree mercy, clemency, forgiveness across the board, and that we're moving forward as one nation under God. And I think that moment is now, actually.
So hot Vivek able to go onto the Breakfast Club of all places and argue that America's past with slavery was a good thing through the lens, of course, of those who fought to end slavery from its inception, from like our very founding. Just wow. It really does depend on perspective. And what balls, the balls on this guy. The conformists who parrot the party lines today are like the ones who would have followed the pack as proud slaveholders 250 years ago. Dude, walking in and making that point to Charlamagne Da God. Amazing. Vivek continued by talking about the GOP. Nikki Haley, the establishment is trying to resuscitate Dick Cheney 2.0. We don't need the GOP of the past. We need the GOP of the future. And then getting Charlamagne to agree with him on all main points. Really a remarkable episode. Link in the description.
Yeah, this was a great one. I'm gonna try to watch react to the rest of the video. This was an interesting topic. and back and forth. They both made great points. Obviously, it's funny the title that he schooled Charlamagne Da God on some points. You know, obviously with uh, Abraham Lincoln, you know, being around the same time as John Adams. You know, so that, you know, besides that, it was a great topic, great back and forth. They both made some great points, but I'm gonna try to react to the rest of the video. Yep, and that's it for Unveiled Reaction, and we out. Bye.